Cool. I got the awkward things out of the way before we start recording. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. And by show, I mean conversation between me and Christine. How are you all doing today? Hit up that chat. Like and subscribe. Yeah, where is everyone from? Because I am from Vancouver, and Christine, you're from Bay Area.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, I live in San Jose now, but I was in San Francisco. Sometimes people don't know all the cities in the Bay Area, so it's just easier to say.
San or Laz, that's all it is. San,
Yeah,
Laz.
exactly.
Ooh, Nigeria. What up, my dude? There's a couple of you guys. Ropski doopskis. Chicago.
I love the diversity in locations. It's awesome.
That's pretty cool. Okay, shall we get to it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. Do you want to introduce yourself, Christine?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Really nice to meet everyone, and thanks so much for coming to this talk on a Friday. So my name is Christine Yoon, and I am a senior design manager at LinkedIn. So a little bit about my background. So I actually studied business in my undergrad. And I actually worked at like consulting for 5 years. I was at Deloitte Consulting for about 5 years doing like various stuff in like the technology practice, where I was doing things that a product manager would do, user researcher would do, designer, project manager. So a big run of like different things in terms of just understanding like technology and implementation, how that works. But I ultimately fell in love with the design process. So I decided to pivot full time into UX design, and went back and got my master's degree at California College of the Arts in San Francisco. And then I started at LinkedIn as a UX designer about 4.5 years ago, and just basically worked my way up to where I'm at now as a senior manager. So super excited to talk to you all today about mentorship, because it's been like a very critical part of my career too. I also do a lot of giving back on the ADP list platform and in other venues too. So happy to talk to you all today about that.
Wow, it's a little hard to follow a show like that. Hello, everyone. My name's Andrew. Thanks for coming. Thanks for showing up. I am a senior designer at a startup here in Vancouver called Rocket Plan Technologies. My journey to design is a bit different. I worked in a variety of industries and skill sets before, and then I transitioned in 2019, went through a program, fairly short one, and then got a couple jobs, got a job at a startup, got a job at this startup, been kind of climbing my way since. I've been a public speaker for 7 years. Used to do talks on mental health and prevention of bullying in high schools, which was cool. And now I'm here being a mentor on ADP list and just building up my skills and considering, should I still shortcut to architecture or stay in design, because life has hard decisions, yo. That's how it be, though. Happy though here to host this fantastic individual, Christine, and ask her a whole bunch of really hard questions about how do you find a mentor in a day and age like this?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Andrew. So I think when it comes to like finding a mentor, it really depends on what you need as an individual. So I think about it as like mentorship definitely evolves depending on the stage of your education or your career. Like a type of mentor that you might have in school is very different in the sense that, you know, that type of mentor might be helping you think about what you need to do to succeed in your classes, like from a learning foundation type of thing, and potentially getting you started into the career that you want to do. Versus like later on in your working career and like later stages in life, a mentor could play a very different role in terms of helping you understand how to further succeed in your career. How do you get to that next step, whether that could be like another job, a new industry, a promotion, things like that. And I think when you think about it from that standpoint, in terms of like the strategy of where you want to go in your career and schooling, that's where you think you should think about applying like finding mentors that can help you along the way. And I think mentorship is just very important in general, because honestly, a lot of us don't know like what you're doing when you first get into a particular field. It could be very daunting. It's really hard to figure it out on yourself, on your own. So relying on people who are experts or folks who have been there, who can even empathize with you and just like, talk to about problems that you're dealing with, is like a very important piece. So when it comes to finding mentors, to answer your question, Andrew, there's like a couple of ways of going about it. You can either like find them through the connections that you already have. So either in the school or workplace that you're at, or maybe the boot camp that you're doing, previous jobs, friends, those types of personal connections that you have. But then there's also mentors that you can find outside. So these might be folks that you aspire to be, like where maybe you're trying to break into the UX design industry and you're not there yet, but you want to talk to folks who are doing that. And I would recommend you attending events like this. Using LinkedIn is a really great platform. It's like, basically the largest professional people listing out there. So you can find folks who work at different companies. And then joining like local professional networking groups that may be out there. So ADP list is another really great one, but there's a lot of different resources that you can use to find the folks that you're interested in potentially connecting with.
That was a lot of advice in a very short period of time. Did anyone take notes? Because I forgot to. I think the point that you made specifically there about considering what you're looking for and then finding a mentor who is either there or has done that is like particularly pertinent, because in my experience mentoring so far, I have often found that people just kind of come and they don't really even know what they're looking for in the first place. So I think the first step to finding a mentor is defining what you need help with, right? And then
Yeah.
once you know what you need help with, you know who to ask for help. Because if you're a person who's very much into, say, a more artistic, expressive system of design and is a much more focused on, say, the UI elements of the work, asking a senior UX researcher, how do I grow in my field, is maybe a bit moot.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that too. You also have to think about the mentor's experiences too. And when you're asking them questions, that's really important, because depending on the person that you might find, they might not have that specialty. So for example, like, folks might come talk to me about like visual design or pivoting from graphic design. It's not that I can't help them. It's just that, the background that I came from is from a business background. So when it comes to advice, like I might empathize more with those particular individuals. Again, it's not that I can't say I can't help you. It's just like the types of questions, like I might relate to something more and be able to be more pointed in terms of the feedback that I'm giving. So when you're looking for a mentor, I think it's important to consider their background. Like what do they do? What are they doing now? What are they passionate about? It's not always a professional context too. You can totally connect with a person. Maybe you're both equally as passionate about travel or photography, and that could be the connection point to having like something to talk about. But when it comes to finding mentorship, the connection is actually really critical, because then you also feel like you're getting more of that personalized advice versus just something that's generic that you can find on like Google or like Medium or something like that. So yeah, so when I'm looking for a mentor for myself too, I always try to find somebody that I aspire to be, but has something that can relate to me in terms of my personal experience.
That is a really great point. Like the humanity of the connection is grossly underrated, right? And it's incredibly important to make sure that this person not only is able to help me professionally, but able to understand me humanely, right? Humanely, I guess perhaps not the right word, but the point being, right? You have to be able to understand who I am. What have I come from? What have I done? Right. And then what have they done? Right. Is if someone has like done their like masters, right, and you're trying to come up from a transition through a boot camp, you may have difficulties relating to each other's design journeys, right? So it's very critical to not only look at the path of work, but also the path of life, right? If someone who's in his early 30s, went looking for mentorship from someone in their early 20s who just came out of a bachelorship into a new design position, be a bit of a strange situation to try and relate as humans, because we've had such different experiences. But you're right, finding equal passions, equal desires, is a really, really great point to build that bridge, because in the end, mentorship is a two-way conversation. It is a two-way street. Mentors gain a lot from mentorship as well. I have learned an incredible amount from doing this already. And I think people kind of forget the fact that, hey, I may be a mentee, but you have lots to contribute too. So make sure that you find a strong connection with the individual in order to like see a lot of growth from both sides.
Yeah, totally. And one thing that I've also learned just being in the industry, job titles don't really mean much. So for example, like somebody being like a director of design at a big company is like vastly different in terms of the skill sets of somebody being a director at like a startup. And just because you want to be a director doesn't mean that your experience is going to fit that other director that you're talking to. So, a part of the process in terms of like learning on finding a mentor is just like you sometimes have to go through these like different conversations. You might need to meet a bunch of folks until you find the people that you gel with. And those are the valuable mentors that you want to keep in your back pocket. Like these are relationships that I also think about as folks that become ultimately like, friends or just people that you can really trust. And I think that's super important to have in your career versus chasing after like just a title or an ambition in terms of the folks that you're trying to talk to. Because it comes down for me personally, it's a lot about quality too when it comes to finding mentorship versus just sheer quantity of how many people you can talk to and how many people you can network to help you along your process.
Yeah, that's an incredible point. Quality over quantity is really critical. You may have 20 mentors, but the minute you say, oh, I have 20 mentors, I'm like, you're not paying attention to any of them then. And this may be a slightly spicy opinion, but you're right. Job titles don't mean anything. I've met people with job titles and I've been like, you have no idea what you're doing. That's okay. Yeah. But like, what the
Yeah, exactly. And it's different just depending on the industry too. So, I think again, it comes down to the human experiences that you should be looking for. Yeah.
Design is a universal skill set, right? The ability to understand, empathize, and build is like a creative skill that's been present throughout humanity's history. We're just seeing newer and different evolutions of it these days. So how that works in each individual space, because it's such a dynamic skill set that is very adaptable to where it is and how it is expressed, makes it a little more challenging. So honestly, a lot of it just comes down to having that first conversation and not being afraid to breach the gate, if you will, and see what it's like. Christine, we can keep hacking at this, but there's already one great question if you want to hop into
sure.
it. Okay. Rachel asked, how are you able to look for mentors with specific backgrounds via ADP list? I find that the search is pretty weak in finding mentors to find. So I have a response to that, but then I want to hear your thoughts on my response.
Yeah, go for it.
My response to that, Rachel, is use multiple sources. Right. ADP list doesn't have to be your golden truth or your Bible for finding a mentor, right? It can just be considered a catalog of individuals, right? Then take that and go look at them on LinkedIn, right? See if you can find them on their socials. Design Twitter is a pretty cool space. I'm not going to lie. I mean, yeah, it's Twitter. There's all sorts of bad stuff, but like I've gotten some pretty cool conversations on Twitter, talking to designers there, right? Check out their Instagram, see if you can find that, right? It's not stacky. It's just research, right? Check out these people, find out who they are, talk to them, right? And then once you can figure that out, you can then go, oh, okay, this person's actually pretty cool. I want to have a mentorship relationship with them. Then you can breach that gate.
Yeah. Yeah. I 100% agree with you, Andrew. It's just like I think about mentorship, it's kind of like dating in a weird way too, right? Like if you're going to, like when
Tinder for
apps
mentors
and stuff like that, right? Yeah. Are you just going to trust what Tinder has? Probably not. You're probably going to look at their socials or Google them or just try to find some information around like mutual friends to get an idea of like the kind of person. I feel like when it comes to like professional relationships, when it comes to like mentorship, or even like when you're looking for a job, you should be doing research to just better understand how you might be able to fit and gel with this particular individual. But sometimes, people, you can't find them online. So it's totally fine if you just like, oh, like I want to be a designer at Facebook. This person works there. Let's give it a shot. Let's have a conversation anyway. Have that initial conversation, see if you gel. If you don't gel, I think it's totally fine. You can stay in touch with that person and connect with them on social media. But, I think if you're truly looking for a dedicated mentor to really help you and like blossom in your career, you're going to want to have you're going to want to have some of these conversations just to find that person at some point. And it is a little bit of trial and error too. So It's never going to be perfect. Same with dating, right? You're going to go on a bunch of first dates. They're not going to be great. And then, maybe you want to stay in touch and be friends with. Yeah. Some of them want to be friends with them. Some people people, you're like, oh, that's like, that could potentially be the one person. So it's still the same. I think it's the same with mentorship.
Yeah. Everyone else, please throw your questions in. We want to respond and talk to you guys for what you want to hear about how to find a mentor and what your questions are. So get slamming those in the chat so I can see them and grab them. Rachel did have a follow-up that I want to touch on here. She's saying, when you are looking for a mentor, how do you look into their backgrounds in storytelling, anthropology, expensive problem solving? So those three things are all pretty different things, right? How do I tell this mentor is a good storyteller? Go look for what they've written, right? A lot of mentors have mediums. A lot of them publish their work in other ways. See what you can find about their published work, right? Ask them is another option on that too. Anthropology, LinkedIn, look into their background, see what they've actually studied, right? See if they share their passions in what they write. I find many of the really great mentors that I've found them by the work that they've done, and then I've looked through their work and found a connection that way. When it comes to expansive problem solving, I mean, that's a pretty specific skill set you're looking to find there. I think you're only going to find that by having conversations with people, right? You've got to like step out and ask, right?
Yeah, totally. And another way, like it sometimes feels like mentorship, the big burden is on you to find the right mentor. It's not always that too, right? You can also try to look for, ask your friends. Maybe people have like recommendations for you, or if you're in school, there's sometimes formalized like programs out there or like networking events, and you should take every opportunity for these free programs that come to you so that you can, just go and look for it as a potential opportunity to find someone as a mentor. And sometimes, like, going to a lot of these events and stuff like that too, you don't have to feel like you have to have an end game every time, like where it's like, oh, I'm going to go to this networking opportunity. I'm going to find 5 mentors and hopefully get a job from it. Sometimes it's just like fun to go just for the sake of meeting people. And you never know, because like when I was like trying to break into the design field, I would go to these things and I would be looking forward to maybe talking to the speaker and like, connecting with them. But in reality, it doesn't always happen that way. But in the meantime, I met a lot of others who ended up getting great careers and being like really great friends now that I keep in touch with. And even though they're my peer, I still look up to them in terms of like for mentorship advice, maybe in the specialty of the field that they do, where I don't have exposure to. But it's like, we're still peers. So mentorship can manifest in a lot of different ways. It doesn't have to be people that you look up to. It could be across from you, or people who are trying to start their journey that can potentially become that network and that connection and help you at some point in your life too.
I think that's a really key thing that I want to touch on there before we follow up with another question. And it's that a lot of mentorship is essentially based around mentorship itself is an experience. The process of talking to people and learning from them is something we've started at young ages, and we kind of lose when we leave college, and it's kind of a freaking shame. So you got to really focus on the fact of like, mentorship doesn't, like you said, you don't have to have an end goal. It's not like I have to talk to this person to get from them to get to here, to get to there, get to there. I'm going to be real frank with anyone that thinks the way you're going to go forward, that's not going to work out for you, because people can feel when they feel like they're just being used as a stepping stone to get somewhere, right? And you have to think about it from the mentor's perspective too, right? I'm giving my time to help people. If it's just a business transaction to you, like, I'm not into it, right? I can, it's hard to not think about the many mentees that have come to me. And it's very clear of like, you're just looking to essentially like leapfrog off my back to somewhere else, right? You're not looking to connect with me as a human. You're not looking to learn from me. You're not looking to teach me anything or like help me as well, right? There's no back and forth. It's just a give me what I can from you and move on. That's not a healthy relationship. That's not going to build trust. That's not going to build rapport. And that's not going to endear a relationship with someone who's going to want to help you, right? So you've got to consider that and like be willing to like participate, right? And when it comes to like end goals and stuff, sometimes just going out and being willing to talk and listen to people is going to teach you much, much more. I found my keyest mentor, who I like give the most credit to in my journey and who I have a deep amount of respect for. I found him standing off to the side at a mixer at a conference. And I was just like, I know I'm here to find a mentor. I don't know how to do this, but I know a lot about human interactivity. And I know that like, there's something about this guy. I want to talk to him. And so I just walked up to him and we started having a conversation. And now here we are like 2.5 years later, and he's like one of my closest friends. So like, you just got to go with the flow.
Yeah, yeah, totally agree with that. And I think there's some interesting questions popping up too, Andrew, around
Hmm.
just like, how do you have a conversation with a mentor, especially
Mm,
if you're looking for one?
that's
And
a
I
good
think
one.
like your story really resonated with me because whenever it comes, even if it's like, it can be intimidating. Like, for example, if you're fresh out of school and you're talking to somebody who's like, 10, 20 years established in their career, you're like, oh my gosh, like what should I ask them? It's like, you get kind of nervous in those moments. But the way that I always think about it is when you talk to people, just be genuine around like the
Mm,
curiosity. And like as a mentor, I can tell when somebody is being like really fake or like, they're like, oh my gosh, I love everything about you. I've seen you in all your talks and like, I really want to be like you. It's like, oh my gosh, like that's kind of scary as a mentor. But if it's like
mhm,
more from a genuine perspective, like Christine, like I really I saw that you pivoted from a similar background to me. I'm considering grad school and deciding if that's the best route versus like going a boot camp. Like, you know, um, would you be willing to give me advice? It's like slightly different in terms of the approach, right? When it comes to it, when you're like being more genuine, more curious, and then willing to listen, I think is the other thing. And then make it conversational. I think a lot of times when people have mentorship calls, they think about it as like, I must get through these 10 listed questions. So I keep asking, asking, asking. But then the mentor and the receiving end just feels like it's like an interrogation or like an interview.
mhm,
And I'm not understanding what you might need as a mentee. So it's also equally important to like, as you're asking questions, give me information so I understand who you are as a person, how I can better help you and guide you. And just like opening up back and forth so that it just like, again, just think about it as like a friendly conversation. You have nothing to lose. So it's like, just like, how would I, want to connect with this individual by asking some questions that I might be intrigued about in terms of their career, for example. And if you kind of go about it that way, you'll generally find a lot more success than being
mhm.
very talk about business kind of mentor relationship. Because those do get tiring after a while. So yeah.
Yes. I think there's another question here. What can we specify what a mentor does? I'm really curious, and I feel like I don't want someone to feel saturated. What's considered a good middle point? Gabriella and Marie. Um, that I think plays into, or I'm going to connect that to the answer you just gave. And I think when it comes to building that relationship and that conversation, vulnerability is key, right? I know it's scary, especially to like a total stranger, but one of the best conversations I had with a mentor was I went to them and said, hey, this is where I'm at. This is kind of what I've done. I've seen you've done these things. I'm scared terribly of trying to do this. I have no idea how this works. I have no idea what I'm doing. Can you give me some advice? Right. And that guy just like opened the floodgates on me. He's like, I have got so much help for you, kid. You chill out. We're going to have a chat. And he sat with me for like 2 hours when it was supposed to be a 30-minute conversation. So, like, be honest and vulnerable. Right. I know that sounds really terrifying to some people. Right. But I can encourage you that, like, I've had one negative interaction with one person, and it's just because she was mean and she talked to me like in DMs on LinkedIn. I'm like, hey, cool, we're not having a conversation ever again. Have a good day. Right. But every other person I've ever gone to, it's been so incredible. Right. So just kind of building that bridge and being a little vulnerable about, like, hey, I have a lot of questions. I really don't know what to say right now. Right. And if you don't know how the relationship needs to be going forward, be vulnerable in that too, and just ask, like, hey, I don't know what kind of like availability you have, right? How much time do you have to dedicate? How do I go ahead and conducting myself while then talking with you in the future? Can I just DM you about anything? Do I need to set like a schedule? Where is your boundaries, right? Ask those things, and mentors are happy to set them, right? And then you have like a clear understanding of your relationship, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with asking questions about how do we have this relationship, right? We get it. As mentors, we'll be able to tell you, hey, yeah, DM me whenever, but I'm going to get back to you when I can, right? I'm happy to talk to you bi-weekly, right? Or however that works, right? We get it. We're busy individuals, but we're doing this by choice, right? We're going to be there to make time for you.
Yeah. And I also like to think about it as like most mentors want to be a career coach, but the thing is, we don't always know the answer to everything either. So I think it's it's okay. Like if you don't have like that perfect mentor, again, think about it as like a set of friends. Like you might have like a specific friend that you want to go party with all the time, and a friend that like you just want to have like deep conversations with. It's the same with like a mentor. There might be different folks who might have specialties in different areas of their career that you might want to like, check out as a resource when you need that help. But I think it's also important for you when you're looking for a mentor to find somebody who respects you too. I'm not gonna lie. There's a lot of people who want to say that they're mentors, but they're not good at it. And in the sense that they just, talk, don't really like listen to you or kind of make you feel bad about like some of the questions. Those are red flags. If you're kind of getting that in a relationship, you don't need to be in that position. Like,
Mhm.
as a mentee, you also have the power to, just stop the conversation or just be like, thank them for their time and not continue that mentor relationship too. I think it's important to find somebody that you feel like is supportive of your career and your needs, but also listens to you and gives you advice that you can take that you feel is like tactical and tangible. And that makes sense given kind of the stage of where you are. So a lot of it is like, I feel like mentors, it's a combination of like a coach, a therapist, like, like a friend. It's like,
The
it's
therapist
somewhere
part
in
definitely
between
plays in.
there. Yeah.
It is a very unique relationship, and they can be difficult to understand because they're so outside the bounds of what we consider normal relationships. I think to like the idea of an apprentice and a master, right? Those terms are a little archaic and like they carry connotations that we can ignore, but kind of consider that, right? The young upcomer stepping into a new space who's eager to learn and very excited, and the grizzled veteran that's been through this enough that he could write it with like his eyes closed, right? And he's just trying to convey wisdom to someone who may have knowledge but very little understanding and wisdom, right? So um yeah, those terms are really specifically chosen. So looking into that, I don't have enough time to wax on the idea of like apprentices and masters and wisdom versus knowledge. That's a whole other thing. But that's another. We only have a little bit more time here, a couple minutes, and there was a couple questions I kind of want to tie together here because I'm seeing a trend in them. Jessica Smith asked, can you talk about what a prospective mentee can do to do the work as a mentee or prepare to be a good mentee? And then Katrina asks, how often should one be meeting with their mentor? And then Lorna Tanner, you mentioned that you've been having issues because it seems sporadic and difficult to like bridge a strong relationship with someone. All of these three things, I see some pretty similar trends. And one of them is that do not formalize your relationships, right? Try and make them very human and understanding. Look at the particular individual you're talking to, how they can help you, how you can be present while they're helping you, right? Understand what are you looking for is the best thing you can do. If you know exactly what you're looking for, what you're trying to do, or if you don't know and you're just trying to be vulnerable about that, that's the best thing you can do to help your mentor help you, right? And if you're having challenges on ADP lists, there are other ways to find mentors, reaching out directly, just doing it in real life events. I know COVID it may be still difficult these days, right? I know some places are back to seeing individuals in person, others are not, but try and start the relationship on ADP list and then see if you can reach out to people more directly and build relationships with them there. Also, just being
Yeah.
present in design spaces.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it too is just like, just ask, like, in terms of, don't assume what people's like regular schedule or cadence would be, or maybe even the communication style. One thing that I always do, regardless if it's a mentorship meeting, it could be a work meeting that I have too. Like when I meet somebody for the first time, I always try to understand like who they are, what motivates them, what's their communication style like, and how often do you want to stay in touch? So some people drive on their calendar and they're totally cool with meeting you like monthly or, on some sort of regular cadence. Some people are really busy and they're just like, just reach out to me when you need help. So kind of like, figure out that flow in terms of what works for these individuals. Again, it's like the same with like meeting up with your friends. Like some groups of friends you might have regular meetups with, and then some you just see every now and then, but you can just like reconnect and have that conversation again. And then I think as a mentee, some things that you can do going into it, I think it's what I really like when I have mentee conversations is those who come in with, just like a set of like things that they want to get out of the meeting, not necessarily like an agenda, but at least it's kind of clear cut in terms of what things they want to get to in the questions. So one thing that you can do is just like, you should always start off with an introduction about yourself. Don't jump into the questions right away, because I might not know who you are. And I could be taken aback. It's like, oh my gosh, this person's coming at me with 100 questions right now. So introduce yourself, and then maybe just set out like, hey, this is my first time having this mentorship conversation. I just really want to get some advice out of, like how to break into the UX design field. And it's hopefully just, we can have a conversation about it through a series of questions and like learnings here. And that could just be your goal or your objective, right? And that just helps set the tone too for the conversation. And then at the end, what I would always do after I'm done with the call is to see if there's a follow-up. For example, like if I wanted to talk to you again, what's the best way of reaching out to you? Can I connect with you on LinkedIn? Just asking those types of questions can also be really good, so that you can understand how you can continue the relationship if you decide to do so.
Cool. My calendar looks a little weird. We're going to 11:30 or 11? Just 11?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're at time, people. I just wanted to pop in on one quick thing there at the end, though. Christine, you touched on something. It's a very common business term that I think some people may have heard before, but it's defining what is success to you, right? And it's a common thing that I do when I go into meetings or mentorship sessions. I always ask, what does success look like for you in this session? Like, what does success look like for you, right? So define success for yourself, let them define success for them, and then find what that means for you two together. That's the path forward in many things. Thanks everyone for coming. There's been some pretty cool questions in there. You can reach out to me and Christine directly via our socials on there. Happy to take more questions. If they didn't get answered here, just send them to me in a DM. I'll get to them when I can. No promises on when. But thanks everyone for coming. Thank you, Christine, for bestowing on us your expertise. And thanks for sharing the stage with me. I really appreciate it. I learned a lot from you today.
Yeah, no, totally. This was a lot of fun. And like for folks, sorry, I know it's really short, but if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Andrew and myself. One thing I do ask is if you do connect with me on LinkedIn, please write a message in terms of like maybe how we might have crossed paths, because I get a lot of connection requests. So I definitely want to prioritize folks who had an opportunity to kind of like want to talk to me versus somebody who might be trying to sell me something. So, so that would just be helpful.
Okay, cool. Everybody, have yourselves a wonderful day. Get your butts out of here, and we'll see you all another time. Bye-bye.
Happy Friday.